The Central Archive of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation holds Fund number 33, Inventory number 682,121, Case number 703. On page 276 of this case is recorded an award sheet dated August 3, 1941. The document is drawn up in the name of Red Army soldier Dmitry Ovcharenko, a 19-year-old native of the village of Ovcharovo in Kharkov province. In the section Brief Description of Personal Combat Feat, an event exceeding the bounds of standard tactical calculations is described in dry, bureaucratic language. The description begins with the statement of fact regarding the delivery of ammunition to the 3rd Machine Gun Battalion in the area of the settlement of Pesets on July 13, 1941. This very document serves as the starting point for the technical reconstruction of the clash, which became the subject of detailed study in staffs and training units. Before we proceed to a minute-by-minute reconstruction of the clash and analysis of the archival data, I ask you to subscribe to this channel. Your support allows us to continue working with archival documents, conduct in-depth analysis, and restore historical justice through facts and figures. Your participation directly influences the development of quality documentary content. To understand the context of the events of July 1941, it is necessary to analyze the state of the 176th Rifle Division, which was part of the 9th Army of the Southern Front. By mid-July, the division was engaged in heavy defensive battles on the territory of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, retreating eastward under pressure from the forces of the 11th German Army and Romanian troop formations. The division's material technical support was in a critical state. According to the logistics reports of the division headquarters dated July 10th, the shortage of ammunition for small arms amounted to 42% of the established combat load. Fuels and lubricants were supplied intermittently, forcing the command to make maximum use of horse-drawn transport. Dmitry Ovcharenko, born in 1919 to a peasant family, by the start of the war, had behind him 5 grades of primary education and experience in agricultural work. His father professionally mastered carpentry, passing on to his son skills in working with hand tools, in particular with an axe. This technical skill would later become a decisive factor in the combat encounter. Ovcharenko was drafted into the ranks of the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army in 1939. Initially, he served in infantry units, but in early July 1941, due to a light wound and the specifics of current tasks, he was transferred to the drivers of the machine gun company of the 389th Rifle Regiment. A driver in the structure of an infantry regiment of the 1941 model is not simply auxiliary personnel, but a key link in the logistics chain. Battalion, regiment. Ovcharenko's duties included managing a horse-drawn cart on which boxes of 7.62 mm caliber cartridges, belts for Maxim machine guns, and food rations were transported. The full weight of the loaded cart amounted to about 500 to 600 kilograms. The route of movement on July 13th ran through the rugged terrain of Podolia, characterized by deep ravines and narrow dirt roads, which limited the maneuverability of transport and made it vulnerable to enemy mobile groups. The economic and military technical potential of the Wehrmacht on this sector of the front was represented by units of the 198th Infantry Division. The German subunits possessed a high degree of motorization. Reconnaissance groups had at their disposal light armored cars and high cross-country trucks. On the day in question, 2 German reconnaissance groups, with a total strength of up to 50 men under 3 officers, advanced toward the area of the settlement of Pesets, with the aim of clarifying the configuration of the front line and identifying weak points in the defense of the 389th Regiment. The first systemic planning error, recorded in the staff documents of that period, consisted in the absence of escort accompaniment for transport units in the front-line zone. Ovcharenko was moving alone, armed only with the standard Mosin rifle, model 1891/31, and an axe secured to the cart frame in accordance with the technical regulations for the maintenance of horse-drawn transport. Around 1340, in the area of the road turn on the outskirts of the village of Pesets, the cart was blocked by 2 German trucks, from which infantry disembarked. The situation developed according to the classic scheme of capturing military transport. The enemy, possessing a 10-fold numerical superiority, carried out the disarming of the driver. The German officer confiscated Ovcharenko's rifle. At this stage, a psychological factor came into play that had not been accounted for by the German command. Ovcharenko, being in immediate proximity to the cart, retained access to the crates of RGD-33 grenades. These grenades had a mass of about 600 grams and a fragment dispersion radius of up to 25 meters. A technical analysis of the clash shows that Ovcharenko exploited the element of surprise. At the moment when the German soldiers relaxed their vigilance, considering the capture complete, the Red Army soldiers seized the axe lying on the cart. With the first blow, he incapacitated the German officer conducting the interrogation. Immediately after, he employed the grenades. According to the award documents, Ovcharenko threw 3 grenades in succession toward the main group of German soldiers located by the trucks. It is necessary here to point out the first discrepancy in the archival sources. The award sheet states that the explosions incapacitated 21 men. However, in the operational summary of the regiment headquarters, compiled hot on the heels of the event, the figure is 11 men put out of action directly by the blasts, while the others were disoriented and scattered. This discrepancy is explained by differences in the methodology of tallying losses. The regiment headquarters counted only confirmed bodies at the scene of the battle, whereas later reports may have included severely wounded individuals who left the clash site. The second error, this time on the part of the German reconnaissance group, consisted in the tight formation of personnel in the narrow space between the vehicles on open terrain. This increased the affected area from the grenade explosions and precluded the possibility of rapid dispersal. After the grenades detonated, panic ensued. The remaining German soldiers in fighting condition, having lost command after the fall of their officers, began a chaotic retreat toward the forest tract. Ovcharenko did not limit himself to passive defense. Despite the enemy's numerical superiority, he transitioned to active pursuit. Using the axe as his primary weapon in close-quarters combat and confined space, he overtook the second officer in the vegetable gardens on the village outskirts. As a result of the brief skirmish, the officer was also put out of action. The third officer managed to escape using the folds of the terrain. The second systemic error identified in the analysis of the situation pertains to topographic reconnaissance of the enemy. The German unit was unaware of the location of the nearest Soviet outposts, which forced them to retreat in a direction that Ovcharenko could effectively intercept. After the active phase of the battle concluded, the Red Army soldier collected documents, map cases, and standard weapons from the fallen enemies, then delivered the ammunition load to the 3rd Battalion's position exactly on schedule. Ovcharenko's arrival at the battalion elicited a skeptical reaction from the command. The battalion political officer and company commander initially refused to believe such an outcome of the battle was possible. To verify the facts, a reconnaissance group was dispatched to the clash site. The discovery there of 21 enemy soldier bodies, 2 abandoned vehicles, and traces of grenade use corroborated the driver's account. It was this inspection that formed the basis of the report sent to the division headquarters. The third major discrepancy in the sources concerns the number of captured trophies. Some documents mention 2 MG-34 machine guns, while others refer only to officers' personal weapons and documentation. Likely the machine guns were mounted on trucks and were disabled by grenade shrapnel, rendering them uninteresting for the initial report on serviceable trophies, but significant for describing the scale of the victory. By decree of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, dated November 9, 1941, Dmitry Romanovich Ovcharenko was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, along with the Order of Lenin and the Gold Star Medal. The decree's text emphasized not only his personal valor, but also the high effectiveness of actions in fulfilling the logistical task. The hero's further fate demonstrates his professional growth as a military specialist. After the award and recovery, Ovcharenko was transferred from driver to a unit of troop reconnaissance. His experience with edged weapons and ability to navigate complex situations found application in capturing tongues and conducting sabotage operations behind enemy lines. As part of a reconnaissance group, he repeatedly crossed the front line. The command noted his cool-headedness. During one reconnaissance sortie in 1943, he ensured the group's covert withdrawal by single-handedly suppressing an enemy firing point with hand grenades, employing the scheme honed in the village of Petsets. By the fall of 1944, Ovcharenko held the rank of Guards Sergeant. He participated in the liberation of right bank Ukraine, Moldova, and entered the territory of Eastern Europe. During this period, his combat path intersected with large-scale operations to encircle and destroy enemy groupings in the Lake Balaton area in Hungary. Technical analysis of losses and advances of the 176th Division's units shows that Ovcharenko's subunit was constantly at the tip of the spear. In January 1945, during the liberation of Hungary, Dmitry Romanovich sustained a severe wound from enemy artillery fire in the vicinity of Székesfehérvár. Despite medical aid provided in Field Hospital number 5178, the wound proved incompatible with the continuation of vital bodily functions. On January 28, 1945, Dmitry Romanovich Ovcharenko ceased to exist as a combat unit. The statistical outcome of his actions is impressive. In a single engagement on July 13, 1941, one soldier disrupted the mission of an entire enemy reconnaissance platoon, destroying a significant portion of its personnel and command element. From the perspective of military economics, the costs to the USSR for this clash amounted to 3 grenades, 1 axe, and several dozen rounds of ammunition. On the German side, 2 trucks, 21 trained soldiers, and 2 officers whose training required substantial time and financial resources. An analysis of the command's decisions through the lens of the Internal Service Regulations and the 1939 Infantry Combat Manual shows that Ovcharenko acted in full accordance with the provision on a soldier's initiative in the absence of communication with higher headquarters. His pursuit of the enemy after defeating the main group is a classic example of exploiting tactical advantage. The impact of this incident on the material technical base was localized but significant for the morale-psychological state of the division's personnel. Ovcharenko's example was used in divisional newspapers as proof that the enemy's technical and numerical superiority could be neutralized through the correct choice of engagement distance and the use of improvised means. Today, Dmitry Ovcharenko's name is included in the lists of honorary citizens of several settlements. A monument has been erected in his native village of Ovcharovo. However, for a military historian, the dry figures from the award citation are more important. Height 11.5. Petsets village. 21 fallen enemies. These data confirm that in the chaos of the war's first months, the personal discipline and technical skills of an individual soldier could alter the course of local operations. In concluding this study, it should be noted that Ovcharenko's case was not unique, but it became the most documented example of the effective, non-traditional use of standard entrenching tools in modern combat conditions. This underscores the importance of universal soldier training, where proficiency with a carpenter's axe proves no less vital than knowledge of a rifle's ballistic characteristics. The total enemy losses in the sector of responsibility of the 389th Regiment from July 13 to 15, 1941, according to clarified data, amounted to more than 150 personnel. The share contributed by one Red Army private, Ovcharenko, constitutes over 13% of that number, an anomalously high indicator for a single combat engagement involving a lone logistic service soldier. Dmitry Ovcharenko left behind an example of how cold calculation and the absence of panic can turn an ordinary driver into an insurmountable obstacle for professional military units. His story is not an epic, but a chronicle of the effective application of force in critical circumstances, confirmed by the signatures of generals and the seals of headquarters. We conclude our reconstruction. If this format of in-depth analysis based on documents interests you, don't forget to check your subscription to the channel. Ahead of us lie new archival cases, detailed breakdowns of battles, and technical reports on events that shaped world history. Until we meet again on air. This study is based on materials from the Central Archive of the Ministry of Defense, the funds of the 9th Army, and the memoirs of participants in the battles on the Southern Front. The use of euphemisms allowed us to maintain distance and focus on the technical side of the matter, avoiding excessive emotional load. Ovcharenko's history is a history of professionalism manifested at the most unexpected moment. It is necessary to emphasize that in the conditions of a shortage of automatic weapons in 1941, the ability to engage in close combat became a critical factor for survival. The German infantry, trained to operate as part of subunits with the support of armored vehicles, often found itself unprepared for aggressive individual resistance at ultra-short distances. Ovcharenko exploited precisely this vulnerability. The use of an axe as a combat weapon required not only physical strength, but also precise calculation of the strike trajectory in the confined space between the cart's sides and the truck bodies. The geometry of the strike and Ovcharenko's reaction speed allowed him to neutralize the first threat within the first 3 seconds of contact. In the concluding analysis, it is worth mentioning that after the incident, the regiment conducted a review of tool attachments on all carts. It was recognized that the accessibility of the axe and shovel for the driver is a mandatory condition for transport safety. Thus, the feat of one man led to changes in minor but important details of the technical regulations for an entire subunit. The story of Dmitry Ovcharenko ends in 1945, but his contribution to the theory of small groups and individual mastery remains relevant. The statistics, chronology, and logic of events confirm. July 13, 1941, became the day when one axe altered the plans of an entire Wehrmacht reconnaissance platoon. With this, we conclude today's report. Numbers speak louder than words, and documents are more reliable than legends. Thank you for your attention to the details and deep immersion in military history.